Hi, I'm Priscilla Robinson, and today we'll discover what it means to grow vegetables in small spaces. I find this a fascinating topic because of the amazing stories of gardeners who choose to grow in small spaces. They come from all walks of life, physical abilities, cognitive spectrums, and their ages run the gambit. Many of you sitting in front of your screen may have had a life-changing event that you feel ended your gardening days. I have aimed to develop a webinar that will bring best practices forward for growing vegetables in small spaces and open a chapter of new gardening possibilities. Listed on the following pages are some wonderful resources that I used while putting this program together. They will be available to you in your follow-up email. So today we'll try to identify strategies for making the most out of your small growing space, evaluating what growing vessels will work in your growing space, identify optimum growing media, evaluate criteria for plant varieties grown in small spaces, learn proper cultural practices, and be aware of pest management strategies. Growing big in small spaces, what might sprout from such an endeavor? When you start with utilizing the space and the sunlight at your home, you are opening up endless possibilities that feed both your body and your soul. Penn State University and master gardeners in Adams County recently released a wonderful paper and study on the many mental health benefits of gardening. They state, there are many psychological benefits that all gardeners of all type experience. Many people are aware of the joy and pleasure they feel when they're outside or in nature. Gardeners understand those feelings all too well, and perhaps it's why many of us participate in some type of gardening. In the US alone, 1 in 3 people garden. The joys of gardening. But what does that mean? Well, the joys of gardening might include some personal benefits like exercise, just getting out and moving, mental health, problem solving. Maybe you'll lower your grocery bill, have some culinary variation, develop greater confidence, enjoy some family time, finally have a sustainable garden, and just experience some good joy and gratitude. For each person, those joys look different. Urban vegetable gardening is a growing trend. Historically, more people are moving to and living in urban settings, and that has a direct impact on yards and gardening space. There's just less of it. With that in mind, gardeners have gotten creative. Pictured here are some very practical uses of small spaces: balconies, patio, rooftops. Maybe you'll use a small size yard. How about your front porch? A railing, your steps, your front yard? What about that gap between the sidewalk and the curb? Maybe you're just going to use a windowsill. But keep in mind, you're looking for full sun, well-drained soil, away from a lot of trees and shrubs, close to a source of water, and reasonably level ground. If you're lacking in those areas, you can still garden in less than ideal settings. So let's check it out. The first thing you want to figure out is what's your budget, your time, and your money. Setting a realistic goal is easier with a small garden. With any gardening budget, the initial outlay may be a little bigger in both time and money, but the good news is the maintenance will be smaller and more manageable. I kind of think of them as gardening snacks. A little work here, a little money there. For my daughter, this is what it often looks like. The kids help her grow starts. That's Katie down in the left-hand corner, growing some seeds in a little egg carton. That was just a 10-minute project. She bought a few pots, but she inherited a lot of 5 to 3 gallon pots, and they sit on her porch on the front porch steps. That's where she does a lot of her gardening. And she also had added some nice sized window boxes that sit up on the railing. She just kept expanding. But this is how it works for her when she's waiting for the kids and the school bus to arrive in the afternoon and she's sitting on the front porch. She doesn't just sit. She does a little watering, some weeding, some tidying. And then when the kids get home, she encourages them to do some harvesting to add to their afternoon snack or feed their rabbit Oreo. So how do you get a place like my daughter, Lindsay? Well, you have to invest some time in evaluating and getting the dimensions and the layout of an area where you want to do some planting. It's really crucial to ensure you use your space efficiently. Remember, there may not be a lot of it. Start with measuring the dimensions of your grow space. What surface is available? How about the amount of sunlight? And where are you going to access your water? What is the traffic flow for people and pets? Lastly, are there HOA rules in your apartment, your condo, or your community that may restrict what you can grow and where? This last topic right here, be a good neighbor, I think has a lot of value. If you're gardening on a deck and there are decks below you, make sure you're not dripping water or knocking pots off the rail onto the neighbor below. The best way to assess your light exposure is just to spend some time and hang out in that area. Are you getting 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, shadows? Is it morning or afternoon light? Track the sun, take some pictures, and then notice the shadows. Where are you going to put those plant vessels? Remember that trees, buildings, and fences produce shadows throughout the day. How often and how long does the sun shine on this garden space you're planning? If you have a lot of shade, don't dismay. There are leafy crops that can be grown with a little bit of light. Again, your time, budget, and your skill set will help to determine the container that will fit in your small growing space. The size should reflect your usable space or that footprint. The materials must be food safe. Ceramic ones are nice and durable. Grow bags can last 3 to 5 years, depending on how well they're cared for. I like this elevated white one. I could see that sitting in front of sort of a half-deck wall. It's elevated, so you're capturing the sunlight. Building a small raised bed for a spot in your side yard can be an excellent project if that's something you like to do, or maybe it's something you want to learn. Can also be a big waste of time and money if you don't have the tools and the means to complete the project. So think about it before you go about building your own custom raised bed. Containers are very versatile. Again, look at your usable space and the layout. The width needs to fit your space. And now something new. The height has to accommodate the root system for the vegetable that you plan to grow. And lastly, the volume of the pot will need enough soil mass for your plant variety. In terms of safety, make sure the plant vessels are food safe, non-toxic, non-leaching. Here's one of those little pots that my daughter inherited, and that's Emma. This is her pet plant, Mr. Broccoli. It's in a food-safe pot sitting on the front step. It gets a lot of attention from Emma. Pots come in all shapes, sizes, and materials. Here's an opportunity to add beauty to your small space. Vessels for plants are made of a variety of material as listed here. Good drainage is a very, very important point. Please look at this top one. A little hard to see, but this is one of Lindsay's pots and it's sitting on a metal frame. Here is a window box and it has a drip tray which will collect the water, and it's got 4 holes around the side. There's little pot feet that you can purchase that go underneath pots. If a heavy pot is sitting on a surface, it is not going to drain. It's going to just build up. So make sure that you're getting good drainage. Another thing that you want to be thinking about when you buy your vessel is if you're not bending so well these days, or if getting down on your hands and knees is out of the question, look for those elevated options. The next slide will give us some good ideas about groupings and patterns. Growing containers can sit in isolation or be placed in groupings. Texture, color, and shape of the containers all add to the aesthetic joy of the space. Don't be afraid to add interesting architectural elements or structural components for vertical growth of plants. I love how this obelisk right here is helping to support the squash as it grows upward. Vertical gardening, that's going to be your superpower. Trellises and fences support plants. The tendrils of peas, cucumbers, and squash will grab onto this. As you're training it, you can use pieces of cloth to help the plant make its way up. And then green beans are vines. The tips of the plant will twist around the cord or line. It's very, very important that when you are setting up your trellis or your fence, that it's very sturdy. You don't want it snapping off or tipping over. You're going to have a big mess and possibly lose your crop. Growing vertically can also be in the way of a wall planter like this one, or simply placing pots and things on a shelves. This repurposed shoe rack is kind of neat. Remember, not too much space for herbs to grow there. I like vegetables like the cherry tomato thriving in a hanging pot. And it's got lots of sun and space to grow. Remember, watering at heights means maybe lifting something above your shoulders. Is that something in your wheelhouse? Or do you need to keep things down more at your hip height? I like these DIY vertical gardening options. I could see those stacked pots on the right-hand side with some nice lettuce or herbs or even some chard. Yeah, and if your pot doesn't have too much soil, herbs have a fibrous root system, and plants like thyme, oregano, and cilantro will do quite nicely in as little as 9 inches of soil. So just keep an eye out for opportunities for DIY projects. So here are some options for vertical gardening. What's going to fit in your small space? How will you take full advantage of the footprint and that vertical grow space? Raised beds is a whole other webinar, and the link is located at the bottom of this page. A custom raised bed that is custom fit to your small space can be a game changer, and there are some informative videos and handouts at our 10-Minute University site. If you don't have space or the skill set, many community centers and parks in our Portland metro area offer raised beds or community gardens, and the fees vary. Now is the time to be looking into those agencies because they'll be taking applications shortly. So the sunny side of your yard, or even the space between the curb and the sidewalk, might make a nice small in-ground garden bed. This trend in urban gardening is often to remove grass from that front yard and replace it with vegetables and mulch. Is that what you're looking for? This may be a bigger outlay of time and effort, but here's a snapshot of the process. Again, you want to go through that evaluation process that we talked out earlier, stake out that area. Soil preparation, this is going to take a little bit more time. The key steps are 1, to remove the grass and the weeds, and then to break up the compacted soil. The illustration on the right side here is a cross-section of how your compacted soil can be improved with the process. The tool I like to use is my garden fork. It is a great tool, not too expensive, and I find it useful for other tasks. So your first step is you're going to want to use the tool, push it down with your foot and your leg, push it down as deep as you can. Then you want the handle to move forward and back at about 20 to 30 degrees. Do this about every 6 to 8 inches until your whole footprint has had these channels developed in them. Then you want to add compost, organic matter to the top. You might want to include some all-purpose fertilizer and mix that well in. When working with native soil, it's important to know what nutrients may already exist in that soil. And so you can send that soil out for local labs. You might want to do this before you start this whole process. Once this bed is created, you'll want to cover that bed in the off-season and have an annual fortification of organic materials so that you can use it year after year. So what is soil? Soil is a combination, 25% air, 25% water, 5% organic matter, 45% minerals and particles of rocks. And in that mix are an army of microorganisms that help in the distribution of nutrients. It's highly recommended for gardeners of all experience levels to test their soil for at least pH early in the season. And most veggies want a sort of a neutral pH. When growing in a small space such as containers or window boxes, native soil, that's the dirt in your yard, is not going to give you good results. A growing media that has been carefully balanced is what you need. Plan for a good amount of soil, of growing media in your vessel. Growing media provides an ideal growing medium to anchor the roots and nourish the plants. It's important to fully hydrate that potting mix before adding it to your container. And this can be done by just putting the hose right directly into that bag of potting mix and saturating it and mixing it thoroughly. There's no needs for any stones, shards, or other materials at the bottom of your vessels. That myth has been busted by science. You'll notice that peat moss is missing from the list. Peatlands are under environmental threat. Ethically, many argue for us to reduce or eliminate the use of peat moss in favor of sustainable alternatives to protect the environment and combat climate change. Coconut coir, composted bark are both very good products. So what are the best plants to grow? Well, what do you like to eat? Exactly how much space are we talking about? And what makes economic sense? The quality, production space, and value were the guiding questions for a study done by Washington State University. And they compared a variety of crops for these attributes in an effort to help the home gardener get the most out of their garden. This study may help you decide which crops make sense for taste, how much space, and the monetary return for your efforts. Real quick here, edamame. You look here, it's in yellow. It is high for quality. It is medium for space, but by the way, this grows vertically very well, and super high for your monetary return, whereas potatoes are low, medium, and low. So use this chart when you're trying to make those tough decisions on what to plant. Seeds versus transplants? Well, the answer is simple. Using both has a lot of advantages. Plan before you buy. Seeds are also available in seed sharing libraries and from other gardeners. In our area, Sandy, West Lynn, and Milwaukee all have seeds to give away for free, available to you, the home gardener. You may even have seeds that you want to share with friends. It can be overwhelming, but believe me, it is good to plan ahead and maybe check with some fellow gardeners what's working for them. For me, getting my whole family involved is with the planning, shopping, and planting really makes it fun. But other gardeners find it a prized quiet time. So if you're going to go into this endeavor with a small garden, make your personal priority one of the factors that will keep it sustainable. How to search for small space varieties. This was fun to research. There are lots of field trials from various seed companies that are looking carefully at the mature size of their plants so that people who get a patio variety truly are getting a smaller plant. When you're looking, look for these symbols, look for these comments, candidate for trellising, compact size. All of those are going to help you. Look in catalogs, seed packets, and plant labels. Here's another great chart that helps to plan out your garden. I got this during my Master Gardener training quite a few years ago, and I am still using it to this day. It's for our Willamette Valley, and it helps to know what to plant in the ground, start indoors, what might even winter over. Soil temperature is one of the key factors for getting your seeds to germinate. So checking your temperature is very important. Plants spacing in the garden is also really important. What will be the mature size of that plant? Also, tiny seeds can be very challenging, so you might want to try and use seed tape. If you're not sure how deep a seed goes, because you've gotten it from a friend, sort of a rule of thumb is 4 times longer than the longest part, 4 times the size of the longest side of that seed. So here are cool crops. That means cool early season vegetables are also called cool crops, and they're planted in early mid-spring. Vegetables can withstand some cold. Vegetables that do not like warm weather are cool crops, and their seeds will germinate in lower temperatures, sometimes 35 to 40 degrees. Here are some varieties. Here is the little snap pea crunch. It actually is one word, snap pea. And again, I was looking for patio, compact, dwarf, container, small, or tidy when I was looking. And this one was great. Compact, small crop, small garden, definitely an option. Other options were little snow pea white and the Tom Thumb garden in the snow peas for peas. Kale is a great cool crop. It can winter over. This beautiful Japanese flowering kale is also very edible. And it is frost hardy, so a good candidate. I really also like this calibration. It's a nice mix of kales that are perfect for baby kale harvesting. And that baby pattern ensures you're going to have a small crop. Couldn't avoid this one. It is Prism, and it is a compact version of a very popular winter bar. It is great for smaller gardeners and container cultivation. It's a good producer. How cute is this? This little bok choy is micro-sized. I could see this in flower pots and maybe other annuals planted with it. It's a perfect bite-sized snack, a micro choy. Spinach is a very good choice. It can be planted young as baby greens, or you can allow it to grow to full size. And it's pretty quick on the return, 58 days from harvest. And arugula is another, I think, real cash crop. It's expensive in the markets. And if you plant it densely and then thin it as it grows, it does a great job. You can do succession planting with this. And this is one of those plants that's going to allow you to go 4 to 8 hours of sunlight. So it can survive in less sunlight. Lettuce is cute. This one is called Tom Thumb, and they're about the size of a tennis ball. And you can sow it directly into the ground. And they said that you can plant this as early as the date of your last expected frost. I love this Daisy Lambert. Had to show it to you. Look at how pretty these leaves are. Could you see that on my daughter's front steps with maybe some pansies planted with it? How decorative and how delicious. Beets are another one that you can actually grow in containers, and this Zeppo is a prime candidate for baby beets, or you can wait until it reaches its full size, which is 2 inches, which is still on the smaller side for beets. Remember, beets, you get double bang for your buck because you're going to get the root and the delicious greens. If you have not planted a Japanese style radish, I highly recommend it. It's another great cool crop. It is delicious, both raw or braised or in stir fry. It grows pretty quickly. And again, you get double bang for your buck. You get the delicious root, and the greens are very nutritious. Beets are pretty in containers because of their big feathery foliage. And this one produces little small round carrots. How much fun are those? I've seen those at the farmer's market. They're pretty pricey. So why not try this? Well, now we're going to get into the warm season crops, and they'll thrive, but do not plant them too early. They require warm days and warm evening temperatures to flower and set fruit. In the Pacific Northwest, transplants are going to be your most successful option for warm season crop. It gives the plant just that boost of growing time. When you are purchasing transplants from a garden center or nursery, make sure that you are looking for strong, vibrant, and healthy plants. If you've got a small garden, you're going to want to start with something very, very healthy. So here are some cucumbers. I love this little patio snacker, or this little mini munch. Both were good for growing in tight spots. Look how well behaved this is going up that trellis. Many of the field trials for that patio snacker said that it stayed within 24 to 36 inches in radius, but it was a big, big producer that rivaled standard growing on the vine. So think about those. Other dwarf cucumber varieties might be the bush pickle, the bush crop, the space master, or the salad bush. All of them will be tidy in their tight growing spots. Tomatoes, the favorite fruit that Americans like to grow. So here are some that are going to do well. This one is compact and determinate. That's a new term that you're going to want to look at when you're looking at tomatoes. This means that your tomato is going to grow to a certain height, stop growing, it's going to set fruit, and it actually will mature within 1 to 2 weeks, all in one time span. How pretty is this? Sunrise sauce. It's a perfect patio tomato. It's determinate, low maintenance. And this seems like it's going to be a delicious 4 to 6 ounce squat Roma shaped fruit. The red velvet is super tight. This one is really, really small. They say you can even grow it on a windowsill. It's determinate. And the plant only grows 6 to 8 inches. So I think having this somewhere that you can watch would be fun. This beaver lodge was developed, and it is compact. It's good for hanging baskets, patio, determinate. And look at that. It's going to have maturity within 55 days. I just might have to plant one of these. This pillar catch orange, they say, is a showpiece of a tabletop. So this is a really, really small one. It creates little tiny cherry style tomatoes, and it's determinate. And unlike traditional heirlooms, this particular one, Tasmanian chocolate, is suited for patios in containers. And it's a small plant with abundant flavor, tidy plant habit, and a short stature. So it was developed, and it's a dwarf tomato project. Eggplants. Eggplants are very decorative on a patio. Think of the glossy clusters of these little mini eggplants, purples, lavenders. How cute are they? These particular varieties are ideal for containers. They don't get any bigger than 24 inches, and they are all American selection honors. So when plants are evaluated, these are winners. Other ones that are popular is Fairy Tale. This one is Fairy Tale right down here. Orlando, Bambino, Bright Asian, all of these are great. Peppers are something else that can be grown in a container. And this one, Pato Peño, is a container, tight garden space, compact, has a nice spicy flavor, will work in 6 hours of sunlight. This is totally going in my front porch this summer. The candy cane chocolate cherry, not only is it a nice bushy plant, but look, vibrant, variegated foliage, and then these beautiful peppers develop. And they say that it can go into containers and good in a patio. I'm going to have to be patient with 70 to 75 days, but I think it's going to be such a pretty plant that it's going to add a lot of value to my front steps area. Here's another pepper, cute, windowsill style, if that's what you're looking for, only 18 inches tall. Even squash are being developed to go into small space gardens. Again, look for compact bush type, large container. Some of them are being developed so that they grow more vertically. So here are some options. Gold Rush is a zucchini. Peter Pan is a scallop style. Sunburst is another one that will grow in a dwarf with the dwarf variety. And there are dwarf summer crooknecks. So lots of options for squash. Beans are a neat idea for a winter crop. And I really miss my snap peas once it gets warm. But look at these. These supposedly are green beans that have the flavor of a snap pea. So Snack Hero is very enticing for me. It says that it has self-supporting plants that can reach up to 18 to 24 inches. You know, on these sort of small bush plants, if you want, you can put a tomato cage when you first plant it, and you can use that tomato cage to help support it and help it to get the most vertical growth out of your bean plants. Here's another one, small space for tight plantings. only 12 inches tall, but evidently it creates a lot of beans if it's being cared for. Here we go with basil. Summer for me, basil, that's my summer crop. I love it. And also, hey, it's a good companion plant for tomatoes. So you could put some of your basil near your tomatoes, or if you have a tomato plant that's growing up tall, you can underplant it with that. This particular cultivar will be great in your small space, and it has resistance to mildew and fungus. And if this is all too overwhelming, the process, you can't go wrong with an herb garden. Ounce for ounce, herbs are the most economically sound crops that you can grow. I planted these from starts, and this pot actually overwintered. Some of these are perennial herbs, thyme, rosemary, and that's a rosemary too. Yeah, that's a rosemary too. Oregano. I never am able to get my sage to overwinter, but think about growing herbs if in a small space. And these small gardens are often front and center in your living areas outdoors. So you'll want a little simple design lesson, whether you have veggies or you just plan to add a few, and you plan to add a few annuals. This is what you might be able to do. This is the thriller, spiller, and the thriller, filler, and spiller method. The thriller is the artichoke plant with dusty leaves and plenty of texture. The fillers are the pansies. By the way, they're edible. And the variegated oak leaf and rainbow chard. Those do some work. The filler hides the woody stem of the artichoke. And lastly, the spiller are some nice healthy chives that are cascading down. Chives are another plant that will winter over. So here's your plan. If you're going to put this up against a wall, your thriller is in the back, and your filler's in the middle. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, well. And then here is the 360 view, and your thriller is in the middle, and your fillers and your spillers. So this is an example how you might add some of the plants that we were talking about today into your big pot. This would be a nice big 5-gallon pot. Thriller, fillers, and spillers. Cultural practices are very important. You want to water regularly, fertilize throughout the season, prune to retain that small size and health, and train vertical growth. Again, in my household, everyone's involved. Here's Emma way back when she was 15 months old. She'd stand on the step stool and help me plant. We had planted some lettuce seeds in here, and they came up really nicely. This is my sister Deb, and she loved gardening out on the patio. She was very ill. As you can see, she's in a wheelchair. She was homebound, and gardening was such a highlight, and it really helped her. Don't ever underestimate the simple joys that the young and the old can get from helping with the chores, the gardening chores. And Penn State has said that it also will increase strength, stamina for those who garden regularly. And I think that my sister really resembles that remark. Another option for watering is using the OLA system. It is an ancient system that's been used for centuries, and it's starting to gain fame again. On the right, here is the concept to show what it looks like. It is a porous pot that is buried underground with access to the surface. You add it with water. The science behind OLAs is straightforward. It utilizes the fundamental principle of soil moisture tension, where water goes from areas of high concentration to low. The soil in the OLA will self-regulate to keep a constant delivery of water to the roots as long as the olla has water in it. And you can just use a stick, you stick it in the olla to see how much water you are. And here is research done at the University of Arizona where they exhumed the olla, and it showed the root going towards the source of water. And ollas watering systems come in all shapes and sizes, from a DIY where you glue two pots together to traditional shaped ones, or these ones where you can actually attach water to the top, bury it, add with the soil, fill it with water, and return the lid to it. Plants need maintenance. Tasks that keep your small garden healthy and producing include the 4 Ds: trimming off the dead, diseased, dying, and deranged branches. So if you have a plant that is supposed to be living in a small space, you need to cut off that branch that's going wild and crazy. Also, clipping off bolting blooms on your leafy greens, thinning the plants, and the removal of cool crops as the season progresses. Succession planting means adding more seeds on a regular basis, and it's really important to do that. You've got a small space, you want the maximum production. This is one of those squash that I was talking about that is growing up more vertically. Be sure to harvest on a regular basis and reduce food waste. Consistently picking the outer leaves from the chard will reduce the size of that plant to keep it in your small garden and also encourage new growth. A helpful hint is using the correct tool to harvest so that your plant is not damaged in the harvesting process. Small gardens need you to fertilize them. You're going to give them everything you need. So a soil test early in the season. Remember, liquid fertilizers deliver it quickly. Solids take more time to release. And just as a side note, organics take even longer to release. The cooler the soil, the longer it will take to release that. So keep that in mind for your early crops. Leafy plants want more nitrogen. Fruiting plants want more phosphorus. Potassium is great for rooting ones. And here are your heavy feeders and your light feeders. Plan accordingly. Managing weeds is really important. Little weeding snacks make it a manageable process. If you wait for the weeds to take over, it's going to be a whole meal of weeding, not just a little weeding snack. So this is a good strategy. I see that the plants are grown tightly, and here's a little weed, get rid of it. Sometimes plants that you do grow in the spring become a nuisance during the summer. Here's some cilantro that just keeps going and going. So I pull it out so that my broccoli has space, and then interrupt the weed cycle. IPM, regular observation of your garden, will allow you to stay ahead of pests. They always somehow leave a message that they've been here. IPM, which is called Integrated Pest Management, is well explained in this extension handout, but it's good to look at the front, the top, and the bottom of the leaves. And look, a picture was sent in and extension said it was squash bugs. Yikes, watch out. So here are all the different things that you could look out for: the slime trail, the damage, holes, mammals. Interrupting the life cycle is very important. Here's the cabbage worm. You see this pretty butterfly flying around your garden? Get rid of it. It's going to lay some eggs and then come the worms. Whiteflies can be a real nuisance, and sometimes just removing those leaves are very important. Birds, the best way to protect from birds and mammals is really barriers. And after I had crows up in the tree near my garden, I was planting peas, I was quick to put the row cover on. So we've got to develop a game plan for growing big in small spaces. We have careful preparations, consistent care, and I've presented a lot of information today, and because there are important tasks in the garden, no matter how small this garden is, you need to keep doing it, and just stick with it. You know, my final parting advice is to plant what you like and to eat what you plant. Growing big in small spaces might just provide some delicious outcomes with some personal benefits as a side dish. And now it's time to open it up for questions.
That was really fun, and we got some really positive feedback. I got to tell you, your chart about quality uh, of homegrown versus store-bought, the quality, the value, the production space it takes. Lots of really good comments on that, and I know people will really be looking forward to getting the link so that they can look that up themselves. So thank you for sharing that. I had not seen that myself. It was really good.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of good questions for you. So you said that, like in containers, 8 to 12 inches is enough root space for vegetables, right? Right? You know, I'm getting there.
For plants that have very shallow root system, or if they have a fibrous root system, which means, you know, lots and lots of fiber, not a big fat
So
taproot.
something like tomatoes and all would need more than maybe 12 inches, depending on the variety, kind of thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Unless it is specified, like the little miniature dwarf ones that I showed. No, tomatoes, they're going to be wanting a big 5-gallon pot to really develop and produce for you.
Yeah. Okay. Another question we had was, are maturity times for warm season crops days from planting out the start or from when you plant the seed?
Great question. It is when the plant goes in the ground. Yes.
So if I start seeds ahead of time, 6 to 8 weeks, I don't count, okay, so I've got 75 days for some of the peppers that you were talking about. That's after I put them in the ground.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it's warm enough.
If it's warm enough.
Yeah.
And we don't get any benefit by putting them in early when it's cold, unless you're using season extenders, because you're going to stress the plant and it might catch a cold.
I haven't thought of plants catching cold before. That's great. Another really good question was, can perennial vegetables be grown in containers?
Yes, they can.
Oh.
The thing that's going to happen year after year is you're going to have to tip that plant out at some point and do some root trimming and just see what's happening underground. And but yes, they can be grown in containers very successfully. And
Good to know. Another question that we had was, should we let plants bolt to collect the seeds, or, you know, is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? What's your thought on that?
Well, if you have a small garden, vegetable garden, and your goal is to provide food for you, yourself and your family and friends and neighbors, then letting your plant go to seed is not in your best advantage, unless that is something that you're interested in. If collecting seeds is something interesting, then you can do that. But to get the most out of your crop, you're going to want it at its optimum growing period. And actually, when it's developing seeds, it is at the end of its life cycle. So my first answer is no, but
Yeah.
if that's something that's interesting, you can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and then one of the things that I just noticed going through it, you were talking about green beans, I think, being vines, not vines.
Correct.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Okay, so there are a few crops that do not have little tendrils or fingers that hold on. Green beans are one of them. Hops are another. So if you've ever seen hops out in the fields, they're just making their way up. And so it is the plant growth pattern for the very tip of the plant to try and find its way vertically going up. And so when you're growing green beans in a small space, those vines might start shooting out, and it'll be your job to rein them back in, get them back on a cord, or cut them off, if they're going to start
Yeah.
in especially like if you've got a walkway and these green beans are going crazy. Yeah, those vines are wild, but yeah, it's a plant growth pattern for beans.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Another recent question we just had was crop rotation year to year. How often do you need to swap out the soil and the growing medium in pots? Can you give us some
Oh,
guidelines on that?
okay, so those are two different things. One is if you're going to rotate your crops, for example, you've got a nice big 5-gallon pot and you've grown a tomato in it. Label it. The following season, maybe you're going to plant lettuce and chard in that. And then the following year, maybe you're going to plant peas. So you go with your different plant families. So swapping out the soil is not a necessity. Removing the roots is a necessity because the roots will start filling up those air spaces. Remember, we talked about what's in soil. Air space is very important. So that's one thing. If you only have that one big pot and you want to grow tomatoes in that every year, then it is recommended that you remove at least half of the topsoil because that is where those pathogens are going to live, not necessarily down into the root systems. So if you're going to reuse the same pot for the same crop, yes, remove at least half to 3/4 of that topsoil, put in some more of that growing media. If you're going to do root rotations, then clear out all the roots from previous crops, maybe add a little bit of organic matter or a released fertilizer to revitalize that soil.
Thank you. Great information. Now, now I'm going to ask a question that I know is near and dear to your heart. You
Uh-oh.
mentioned seed tapes several times, and I saw a couple of pictures. Could you just quickly describe, I know you don't have the pictures and everything, but how to make seed tapes and why they're so wonderful?
Okay. First of all, I like to make seed tape because then I can provide a medium for unusual seeds. Like I said, I really like those Japanese style turnips. Well, those seeds are the size of a pinhead. And if you want, and so by creating seed tape, you lay down your paper, you place your seeds at the optimum growing distance. I think we said 3 to 4 inches, something like that. And then we fold that over. And then when it comes time to plant them, I just dig a trench, the depth of that it's going to be measured, and I just roll it out. I can literally plant a whole row of turnips in my small garden in less than 5 minutes. So
Wow.
it saves me time, not only in the planting, but thinning is not one of my favorite jobs because it means I'm pulling out little plants and killing them.
It's so hard.
Um, Another reason that I like seed tape is it's a great activity in the winter, and it's also a great activity on super hot days. So, if I can't get out into the garden when it's 100 degrees, well, I can make some seed tape in the cool of my house.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is commercial seed tape available, and people are welcome to it, but you're not going to get a wide variety. It does not work well for large seeds. You wouldn't use it for peas or beans. Radishes are okay, beets are okay. They can work, but any of the larger seeds you're not going to use for seed tape.
Okay. And you put the seeds down with glue, right? Is that what you said?
Yes, we use Elmer's glue. We did a study with Elmer's glue versus a flour and water type of gluten glue.
Mhm.
And we had better results with the Elmer's glue. Last year, we had some ants come and eat some of the glue. We don't know if the
Really?
ants were already there. I have a feeling they were. This was at Grow an Extra Row. Um, but they definitely liked the glue. But I have never had that problem. My daughter doesn't have that problem. And I think seed tape is a good idea for small seeds.
Yeah. Okay. I know you've recommended it in years past, and I've seen you do it. This year I'm going to do it myself. So thank you for that. Okay.
Ah,
I think that is all of the questions that we have time to answer right now. So again, if you didn't get your questions answered, please feel free to email us and there will be an email in the Zoom link. And if you've got questions about today's presentation, if there's pictures that might be helpful for us to answer the questions, please send those and we'll get back to you as soon as we can on that.
yeah. And a
Okay.
lot of what I talked about today is very expanded in the many handouts in the resources that you're going to see. So, you know, uh, check those out. It's a cold day up here in
Oh,
Portland, so
yes,
it's a
it
good
is.
day to get on your computer and maybe check out some of
Yeah,
those links. Just go to cmastergardeners.org, 10-Minute University. We've got good stuff. Oh, Leah, can I say one thing?
sure.
Um, we do have pH soil testing
Right.
available, and that'd be at Garden Discovery Day in March and at the Spring Garden Fair in May and Fall into Gardening in October. So those are always free pH soil testing to our home gardeners.
It's such a great resource and to have it free and to know that this is what you've got a good chance of success with the right soil pH.
Yes,
If it's messed
absolutely.
up, you can really have not not a happy situation. So thanks for mentioning that. Okay, then.
Well, thank you very much for having
Thank
me. Thank
you.
you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week.